On April 26, 1986, the biggest nuclear disaster in human history took place in the Soviet Union. One of the reactors at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant went out of control, which led to an explosion and fire that demolished the reactor building and released large amounts of radiation into the atmosphere. The explosion was so big that the radiation drifted to most parts of Europe from Sweden to Spain. There was even radioactive rain in the United Kingdom. The harmful radioactive material released into the air was equal to about 400 Hiroshima nuclear bombs. About 150,000 square kilometers of Belarus, Russia and Ukraine were contaminated. So how did the disaster actually happen? In a nuclear reactor, a radioactive atom like uranium-235 breaks apart and releases some neutrons. This is known as nuclear fission, which further strikes another atom and they break apart and a nuclear chain reaction is formed. The reaction is controlled by control rods to slow down the reaction. Water was used as a coolant and pumps were used to flow water constantly. But during a power cut, it takes 1 to 2 minutes to start the backup generator to solve this problem. The workers were trying to use the electricity producing generator as they operate during power cuts. On April 26, workers were testing this method. They inserted control rods to drop power to 700 megawatt from 1600 megawatt. The shift supervisor Anatoly Dyatlov ordered to take out some control rods, but the power output increased to 200 megawatt. Again, he gave the order to take out more control rods and there were only 8 rods left out of 211, which is a violation of rule as there should be a minimum of 15 control rods left in the reactor. Suddenly, power increased rapidly, water is converted to steam and very little water remains as a coolant. Some shock waves were seen in the building, so they pressed the emergency button and all the control rods were inserted. But there was a flaw in the control rods and the power output increased rapidly to 33,000 megawatt and the first blast occurred. The uranium fuel in the reactor overheated and melted through the protective barriers. And after some time, another blast happened. The graphite blocks used as a moderating material caught fire at a high temperature as air entered the reactor core, which contributed to the emission of radioactive materials into the environment. The reactor base started cracking due to heat. There was a water tank below the reactor which was filled with radioactive water. This can lead to an even bigger explosion because water becomes steam instantly and exerts pressure. That could lead to even more radioactive material being released, which would kill millions of people, and for the next 500,000 years the entire European continent would become uninhabitable. But thankfully, to stop this, 3 men came as a savior. Alexei Yanenko, Valery Bespalov and Boris Baranov risked their life and dived into the radioactive tank to open the valve to drain out the water, and millions of lives were saved. It took out 10 days to put out the fire. Emergency workers were drafted into the areas and helped to clean up the plant premises and the surrounding area. But due to getting in contact with radiation, some workers died in 1 to 2 months and other between 2 to 10 years due to radiation sickness and cancer. An area spanning 30 kilometers around the plant is considered the exclusion zone and is essentially uninhabited. The entire town of Pripyat, which lies down 3 kilometers from the plant, was completely evacuated after 36 hours of the accident. There were over 100 radioactive elements released into the atmosphere. There have been at least 1800 documented cases of thyroid cancer in children who were between 0 and 14 years of age when the accident occurred, which is higher than average. Mutations occurred in plants and animals. Leaves changed shape and some animals were born with physical deformities. The Soviet Union did not provide any information about the nuclear incident at first, but when the radioactive dust drifted to Sweden and the radiation level increased, the Soviet Union accepted the incident after 2 days. Government spent $235 billion cleaning up radioactive waste, relocating people, covering survivors' expenses, and decontaminating the environment. After this incident in 1989, an organization called the World Association of Nuclear Operators, or WANO, was formed.